I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your cattle market summary for the week ending January the 20th. Here recently we've had some promising trends for the long-term future of the cattle business, the commercial cattle business, cattle feeding business and the like. And we'll talk about that along with this past week's markets. You look at the board for last week on live cattle, the April contract. Of course, everything was closed on Monday due to Martin Luther King Jr. Day. But on Tuesday, April live cattle were up $1.07. Wednesday up 40 cents, Thursday up 47, and Friday down 90, which is a sell-off after they sold fats quite a bit higher, which doesn't make very much sense. But ending the week with April at 118.97, which was up $1.05 for the week. Your February spot fat market at 120 and a quarter on the board. Feeder cattle for March, Monday closed, Tuesday up 75 cents, Wednesday down 50 cents, Thursday up 60, and Friday up $1.12 to end the week at 131.27, which was up $1.97 for the week. Your January feeder cattle contract ended the week at 133.10. But you look at last week's fat cattle market, which was kind of interesting there. The Fed Cattle Exchange kind of got held up this week after having a big victory the week previous to that, but they averaged their cattle around 120 and a half, but then by shortly after that, and then on Thursday, had a big movement of 105,000, more than 105,000 in the 5 area trading feeding area there. And that's a nice movement there. We were getting used to 100,000 head negotiated movements again, but we weren't accustomed to that for the past several years. But the last part of 2016 we had a lot of it, and looks like we're starting 2017 up there. Of course, they were needing some cattle after the holidays and everything, but sold cattle from 122 to 123, which was $3 to $4 higher, and that's in all 5 areas, and 195 dress, which was $5 higher. And really hard to explain the 122, 123. You had that starting out, and you had it through the end and in all areas. And most of us have kind of given up on the old hat that the harder you work, the more money you make. And also, these packers don't really reward quality. So it's not like they're picking out the best cattle for 123 and the plainer cattle for 122. They've got plenty of programs on a formula basis to get those really high quality cattle, and people feed cattle so long and make them so big now. 3 out of 4 of them grade choice, so you know, that's not a big deal either. And a lot of your high dollar programs like CAB even allow yield grade 4s, so you don't see them really rewarding quality. What they really reward is volume. If you'll sell them more cattle, they might give you a little bit more money for them. Or they might give more for all these if you'll sell them all these over here too. Or they might give you $50 a head under the table if you sell them all your cattle, or promise that you'll sell them all your cattle that you're going to sell negotiated. But that's the way that kind of thing goes. But don't be fooled into thinking that there's something better about the cattle that are bringing the 123. We had mixed loads, mixed pens and split up cattle bringing the 123, and really straight up good black cattle up in the northern plains just bringing 122. But your weighted average is going to be less than 122, even though we had a lot of cattle at 123, which goes to show there's a lot of cattle that are negotiated that are below that. But your weighted average on a live basis on the steers is going to be around 121.90. And on dressed about 194.82, which the dress is a whole lot closer to what your actual market price was than the live was. But box beef cutout values, not too bad this past week. Still kind of struggling, but on the week's average trade there, choice carcass at 191.65, which was down just 35 cents. Select down $1.21 at 187.38. But if you look at some of those trends we were talking about, we talked about that early last week. Was we got the information in from the breakdown of how your negotiated cattle were sold, what the portion of them were negotiated, and how the breakdown was for purchase type. But our cash negotiated sales in 2016 in the 5 area feeding range area went up for the first time probably ever that they've been keeping that. You know, back in the old days, they sold those cattle on the bricks on the river market stockyards, and coming off the train, 100% of them sold negotiated. And then as the packers started moving in, and a lot of that concentration of cattle being fed moved into the plains states and the southern plains, they started getting all these different programs and contracting cattle. And then we got into formula cattle and grid cattle. And it's just been slowly trickling away from negotiated cash trades. But this past year, 2016, it went up for the first time ever since we've been keeping track of that. So now in the 5-area feeding region, 26.3% of your cattle are sold negotiated cash, which means they haggle on them. The buyer go out there and try to buy them. The sellers are working on getting a better price, and you think that's not very much, just a little over a quarter of them. But in 2015, it was just 21.3%, and it had been trickling down fast. But now we're going the other way, which really makes everybody feel better. 10 years ago, in 2006, it was 52%. So that's how fast we've been falling off. But you're seeing more of these cattle feeders. They're wanting to get in there and try to negotiate on a price and get some leverage and kind of get more involved in this cattle market again. And I think it's a real healthy thing. And if we can continue that trend, I think it's a good omen for continuing to be able to keep this industry viable for people. You know, they sell hardly any of the hogs, which we don't have any hogs anymore. I know my kids were involved in a county stock show down in Texas Panhandle this past week. That's the only place you see a hog running around outside. All these hogs anymore are born and raised in a confinement pig factory farm there, and they never see the light of day until they're slaughtered. They even put slats on the trucks whenever they haul them off. But you know, that they ruined that industry, and it looked like the cattle were destined to be in that kind of a same cycle. But seeing this negotiated cash percentage turn around and selling more cattle on a negotiated basis is a great thing, and I think it's good. Another thing we've seen in the feeder cattle is you've seen the sale barns coming back to life. And I know they've never really went out, but it's just seeming like we're coming back to the sale barns. You know, when I was a graduate student, I did my seminar at West Texas A&M, and the title of it was Video Auctions, the Fad of the Future, but that's been a long, long time ago. And then shortly after that, in the last 20 years or so, we thought that the video sales were going to completely take over for cattle of any size bunch. And but now we're starting to see that. When you saw Eastern Livestock go down, and they used to be the biggest player in the videos, and then you saw a lot of these feeding outfits have to bid against each other instead of having a big central buyer buying them all up and then divvying them up to their different orders. Then you saw maybe people starting to pull away from that. Not to say that Superior and Northern Video and a lot of these aren't still viable. They're a good competitor, but a lot of people are coming back to the sale barns. They like to bring cattle in there and put them in front of buyers and watch them bid against each other and look at the cattle and see what they are. Your buyers like to weigh up on cattle in a sale barn better, and you're just seeing some sales get big. We saw that El Reno, Oklahoma, OKC West are having to go to 3 days a week to sell all their cattle. Selling cows and bulls on Monday, calves and stockers on Tuesday, and the bigger feeder cattle on Wednesday. But you know, when you're having runs of 11, 12,000 and more, it's just impossible to get all that done in one day. I know whenever I was a kid, my dad was going to Ambarella. They would start on Monday and they'd sell Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday till they got done. Now it takes them about an hour and a half to sell them. But it's just good to see that your local sale barns, your big regional sale barns, but a live cattle auction seems to be doing well. And, you know, probably 15, 20 years ago, we thought that the only thing they would sell there is a few out cows and some odds off a big country deal. But getting big strings of cattle in your sale barns. And then the sale barns this past week, early in the week, it was hard to tell what the market was because they had that ice storm over the weekend, and it was really wet around, hard for guys to get cattle in. So we really didn't see anything till about Wednesday. and then we started seeing a good steady market on cattle on Wednesday. Then you got into your Thursday, Friday sales after you had that positive fat trade, and we saw your heavy feeders rebounded some. Of course, your board was up most of the week too, so heavy feeders gained $2 to $5 back, and your middleweight and lighter weight calves selling firm to $5 higher, and spots 10, because now that a lot of the guys have moved cattle off wheat because it got so dry, they had that 2 or 3 inches of moisture on that wheat, and the weather's going to warm back up, and it'll pop, and they're going to need something to turn back out there, so they're buying cattle back to put on the wheat. And of course, your guys up north are still buying cattle to background for spring grass, and that's going to be over before you know it, because the guys just start buying their grass cattle earlier and earlier all the time. They'll background them for a while and then get an early turnout on them. Look at Beef Market Central, the market on Saturday evening actually. Imperial, Nebraska had a load of 665 pound steers, bring 147. But on the road here, working with DV Auction up here in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, doing some video work on Daymar Farms, which is going to be one of the largest Red Angus dispersals on a purebred basis in history. And that sale will be coming up in February on the 11th and 12th. But check out DV Auction for all types of production sales and our regular slate of regular commercial cattle auctions. But on the road here with DV Auction, we'll talk to you on Wednesday.